Guys, this past season of Smiling Friends was pretty great. And one of my favorite things about this season was seeing all the new locations, like Alan's apartment. And I gotta admit, Alan does have a pretty nice place. This got me wondering, how much money do the Smiling Friends make? I've done some research and come to what I think is a pretty sound estimate of each member's take home pay. Or at least as sound an estimate as a dude who talks through a cartoon monkey head on the internet can make. Anyway, be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. To make this as easy as possible, let's go ahead and establish the facts. Smiling Friends Inc. is a charity nonprofit based in urban Pennsylvania. The head of Smiling Friends is Mr. Boss, who regularly employs 4 people: Alan, Charlie, Pim, and Gleb, with a fifth smiling friend occasionally employed. While each employee is referred to as a smiling friend, I went ahead and assigned each core employee a more specific job title based on observations I've made while watching the show. Obviously, Mr. Boss is the boss. Alan is most likely the office manager since he's typically keeping up with supplies like paper clips. Charlie and Pim are the main smiling friends because they're the ones who are typically in the field turning frowns upside down. And then there's Gleb. To be honest, I have no clue what Gleb does. The only work we ever see him do is cleaning up the Blimblies at the end of episode 1. But it doesn't feel right to label him as the janitor, so let's just call him an office worker. Initially, I believe nonprofits were very different from for-profit corporations, but after doing some research, they actually operate in a very similar way. The primary differences being how revenue is generated, with nonprofit funding typically coming from both public and private grants. How profits are used, needing to be reinvested into the operation opposed to distributed among investors. And how the organization is taxed, typically exempting them from sales tax, but not things like Medicare, Social Security, and unemployment taxes. Full disclosure, I don't really understand a lot of this tax stuff, so if this channel ever takes off, don't be surprised if the IRS gets my ass on unpaid taxes. With that in mind, I think it's safe to say Mr. Boss is independently wealthy and contributes the majority of Smiling Friends funding, with a minority contribution coming from both state and federal funding for mental health services. Assuming Mr. Boss doesn't need to collect financial compensation, where does that leave us on determining the income of the remaining Smiling Friends? Well, through the first 2 seasons, we've seen Alan, Charlie, and Pim's apartments. We can infer that both Alan and Pim live in one-bedroom apartments by the layout, and Charlie clearly has a studio. According to RentHop.com, the average rent in Pennsylvania as of June 2024 is $1,500 for a studio and $1,895 for a one-bedroom. While in past years, the general rule of thumb is to spend roughly 30% of your monthly income on housing, a recent study by Harvard found 50% of renters spend half their income on rent. So let's compromise and assume each smiling friend is spending about 45% of their monthly take-home on rent. That would mean Alan and Pim are bringing home about $4,200 a month, and Charlie is bringing home about $3,303 a month. Just to clarify, I believe the Smiling Friends are paid salary opposed to hourly, based on the fact there never seems to be any urgency around the office when people are just sitting around. With that in mind, if we head over to Smart Asset Paycheck Calculator and plug in a Pennsylvania area code, we can work our way back from the speculated monthly income and get a ballpark number on their pre-tax salary. That puts Alan and Pim's income at about $64,500 gross income and Charlie at about $50,200. At first, it seems like a pretty big discrepancy in Charlie and Pim's income, despite them occupying the same position. A few things to consider is Charlie is several years younger than Pim, so he may not have been a smiling friend as long, thus receiving less annual raises. Regardless, I'm going to be generous and bump Charlie's income up to factor in lifestyle choices. After the boss gets married, Charlie comes in to work with a massive hangover, and he tells Pim,
Charlie, you okay?
No, I feel like we're gonna puke, dude. I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't. Something's gotta change, brother.
implying Charlie consistently drinks. WebMD estimates a heavy drinker spends roughly $5,100 a year on alcohol, so this will put Charlie's gross income at $55,300. That only leaves Gleb. And if you thought I was reaching before with these estimates, get ready for this massive leap in faith. After Mr. Frog is elected, Gleb gets doxxed and we learn he lives at 1352 Green Palm Terrace, Pennsylvania. While this doesn't give us a lot of info, it's what's not listed that gives us our biggest clue. Notice how no apartment number is given. This implies Gleb lives in a house, With his age being 1,695 years old, it's safe to assume Gleb probably owns his home. With Gleb being over a millennia old, it's possible he purchased this home at any point after Europeans colonized the area that became Pennsylvania. So we can't reverse calculate his income like we did with the other Smiling Friends. According to Zillow, though, the average Pennsylvania home is valued at $269,246, and with an average property tax rate of 1.36%, that means Gleb pays about $4,000-ish a year in property tax. With the average nonprofit salary in Pennsylvania being $66,000 a year, this is a very manageable tax burden for Gleb, and that's not even considering if his wife Marge Simpson brings home any income. So that wraps up everyone's income. I was pretty surprised by the numbers adding up as well as they did, considering how zany and off the wall the show is. And if you're mad I copped out and labeled Mr. Boss as independently wealthy, you tell me how to assess the value of 1/3 of hell. Anyway, leave a comment if you think my math is garbage. See you on the next Randograph.